What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for coming by. I'm Jeremy, and movies are terrible. Did I say movies are terrible?
You did. You totally botched the intro.
This is what happens when I stay up late. It just all falls
That's all I was
apart.
just going to say. I was like, this is what happens when you stay up till 2 in the morning.
Jesus Christ, dude. It's been a while. All right. In 3, 2... Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for stopping by for another edition of People Are Terrible. I'm Jeremy, joined as always with Caleb, and as usual, we're going to be talking about some weird news headlines before we move into some Florida Man headlines. Actually, we got headlines about Florida Man headlines again, so we're going to dive into that. But then, as always, each of us has brought our own topic for discussion in. I want to talk a little bit about fan entitlement in the wake of some of the things that are going on lately in the world of, I don't know, fandom, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then, Caleb, you've also brought a topic as well.
Yeah, I brought the topic of social media censorship. Should they be allowed to? And yeah, I'm very curious to hear your take on all of this.
And we are very curious to hear your take on all of these things as well. So stick around if you have any, thoughts or ideas as we're talking through this. Make sure to leave them down in the comment section, because a big part of the reason why we do this is so that we can interact with you and kind of get your thoughts about it. Before we even get into the news, I wanted to ask you something, Caleb, because I know you're gonna tell it like it is, bro. So I woke up this morning and I had somebody had posted a meme in my group yesterday on Facebook, and it was a split screen image. On one side was Captain Marvel, Brie Larson. It was a profile of her. The next picture over was Tom Holland, kind of from behind. And what the person had done is body swapped the lower torso, because it's kind of a picture of Brie Larson with a flat ass, and then Tom Holland's little bubble butt in the Spider-Man costume. And the caption said, "When life gives you lemons." So it was basically like, you got a flat ass, let's replace it with the Tom Holland's ass, and now all of a sudden it's an appealing looking butt. And I knew immediately. I was like, oh, all right, let's see how this plays out. Ha 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 ha. I didn't really think anything of it. To me, that's not too button pressing. I woke up this morning, and a member of the group who is not very active at all, I can't remember the last time she commented or really posted anything of her own, she reported that image to me. So I immediately deleted it. It's not my aim in life to offend people, but it also kind of rubbed me the wrong way. What do you think about this?
I think you're an overly sensitive pansy if that really bothers you.
Could it be like a insensitive to women with body image issues?
100%. 100% it is. I will use the fat example that I use all the time. I was morbidly obese most of my life. Guess what? You can make fat people jokes around me. I'm not going to be a crybaby or a bitch about it. It's fine.
But you're like the outlier. I think me and you both, like, you fucking say whatever you want to me. And I like comedy that skirts the edge of good taste. Like, I would never say, look, I don't want you guys, or I will say, I don't want anybody posting anything racist or sexist or homophobic in the group. And then I started thinking, man, was that sexist? Does that constitute being sexist?
I mean, it might be a little insensitive, I'm not going to say that that's not something, but I don't know. I'm a firm believer of jokes are jokes, there's a cutoff, but I'm a firm believer of, if you say something about, I don't know, I'll use my own group. If you say something really funny about straight white men and that shit's funny, I don't care how fucked up it is. That's funny. It's a joke.
I'm with you. And maybe that comes along with being, the hierarchy for so long, but it's not like, white girls haven't had it as good as white guys, but they've had it all right for a while now,
My thing is, No, because my wife's a black woman and I can make a black woman joke in front of my wife. And if it was funny, she'd laugh or she'd make a joke herself. She has a sense of humor. Sense of humor is around the globe. There's just people who are sensitive and there's people who are not. And I don't know, if a meme on the internet is the worst thing that happens in your day, then you got a great fucking life. Talk about privilege. You're the most privileged group in society if a meme offends you.
So when I saw it, again, I deleted it and I sat there and thought about it. And then I pulled up her name in the group and kind of was just like, is this person like active? Are they contributing to this group? Or have they now actively just now detracted from the group? And I started thinking about it, and I don't want to be like authoritarian or like this dictator of what people do and don't do. And hey, if you have a legitimate problem with something, you should be able to come to people about it. But I don't like the idea of there being people in that group that their only interaction, the only time they want to participate is when they want to say, that's offensive. So I was thinking about kicking her out, but I haven't yet.
No, I wouldn't kick her out. I mean, she has a right to be offended, and that's her prerogative. But if she's gonna be offended about that, then she's probably in the wrong group.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. Is like I want everybody, like I think I'm on the same side as you of just like I want everybody to kind of be able to bust each other's chops. I think there's probably a lot of girls who would have got a kick out of that meme. It was less about the gender, I thought, than just like, I guess if Captain Marvel didn't have a flat ass, it would have never come up or whatever. But it was just funny looking. I was more laughing about the fact that Tom Holland's butt was superimposed onto this other character. It was just kind of, I don't know, but that's what I woke up to deal with, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if I should have reached out to her and just been like, hey, look, I respect your beliefs and your opinions, and if these are the kind of things that bother you, then maybe this isn't the safe space that you need.
No, I think the proper response is putting her on blast on the podcast. Oh,
yeah. First and last name, fucking Twitter handle, all that shit. Doxer.
No, I don't know. I think like I'm not offended by her offense, like that she's offended, but at the same time, it's people are terrible. The whole terrible umbrella, I don't really consider one of those safe space umbrellas. Like It's just not. If you're that type of person, probably isn't for you.
Yeah, and no, I don't think anybody knows anything more about it than just that general thing. If she happened to watch this video, she would be like, that motherfucker's talking about me, obviously. Yeah. But Cindy, you know who you are. Fucking Lisa. No, I'm just joking. All right, well, anyways, that's it's dumb stuff. Just kind of curious about that. Wanted to get somebody's take on it, because my go-to was like, I'm finna delete this motherfucker right now.
This bitch with her flat ass needs to go somewhere else.
Oh, God. So, all right, we'll go ahead and kick this off with some weird news. And I don't know if you saw a video of this. You can use your imagination, Caleb. I'll play a video while we're talking about it. But there's a Norwegian woman who really loves horsing around. And did you see this on HuffPost?
I just saw a screenshot of it. That was it.
She's got a whole Instagram channel where she gallops around on all fours in like a really creepy, like, I mean, it's accurate. That's what's creepy about it. Like, she's got the galloping down to a science, and, part of me is like, well, it's a way to get viral attention. But then, like, you got to also wonder, like, there's these, like, all these there's some sort of name for them, like, people who are, like, really into horses.
Equestrians.
Is that it? Is that the word?
Yep.
Man,
yep. I the only reason I don't know if I ever told you this, when I was selling jewelry, I'm a member of an equestrian club. My ass, who doesn't even like animals, because there were a lot of rich people there, and I was trying to take their money.
So y'all went there and talked about your mutual love. I mean, you listened while people talked about their mutual love of horses.
Yeah, and then I would say stuff about horses that I had no fucking idea what I was talking about and how beautiful this one was, and then we'd exchange numbers, and then I would sell them watches.
Did you ever hear anybody get, like, were they anybody too into the horses.
Oh yeah, no, these people were like borderline horse fuckers half the time.
Weird, man. Yeah, I knew that obviously there's a lot of people out there that like horses. That's fine, but this idea of like some people literally think they're animals. Like it's a far out phenomenon, but this isn't the first example of this where people like try to live out their life like this woman hadn't got any weird body mods or anything, but I don't know if you remember that one guy who like lived as a tiger. He would like groom himself. We talked about him on the show. Remember, like he had the split cleft lip and shit. Yeah, weird. So did you pull up her videos?
Yeah, I'm watching it right now. It's kind of terrifying where she jumps over the table. That part is pretty insane.
And she's efficient at it. She's got the moves. I wonder what she does in her daytime. So a woman in Norway appears to enjoy horsing around, literally. Ayla Christine went viral recently after videos of her running around like a horse were posted on Twitter. Her Instagram page doesn't have much information on her, but there are lots of videos of her playing horse. And then, you scroll down and there's like half a dozen different videos of her running around, jumping over, like, what do they call those things? Horse races. They've got the little hurdles. I guess hurdle is for lack of a better word.
Hurdle. I should know. I was a member of the equestrian club and I have no idea.
Yeah, they're going to pull your card.
I know.
Is it a membership?
No, I just would go there and talk to people, and it always fucking stunk. Half of it was that, like, sometimes it was nice, but then sometimes it'd be like, let's go to this barn and watch these horses run around. And I'd be like, this sucks. But teach their own.
Man, I cannot see you hanging out at some shit like that.
No, I'll do anything for $1. I'm such a prostitute.
100%, man. That's America. We're all whores here in America. This is America. All right, well, what do you got, man? What's your story?
Before we move on, she's kind of terrifying. It kind of reminds me of like a creature like from A Quiet Place or something like that, the way she runs.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrifying.
Or like if you put a mask on the back of her head, you know what I'm saying? So it was like it was looking up at you and she's fucking running towards you. That would be like some horrifying horror movie shit.
Yeah, no, there's no way. I would run. Like it's almost ape-like too because she's a human, so it's very ape-like.
Yeah, it is.
So this story is about a man who fell asleep in a massage chair. This guy was in a store and he fell asleep, and they didn't notice him laying in the massage store, so they closed the doors. He was sleeping in there, and they locked him inside the building. And then he tweeted for help, which is just hilarious. So a man was forced to tweet help when he got locked in a department store after falling asleep on a massage chair. The man awoke to a deserted shop floor after dozing off in the electronics store in Japan. Identified only by his Twitter handle, the sleepy customer was forced to tweet his plight when he discovered he was locked inside a shop. Posting photos of the dark and empty interior, he captioned, "Oh man, I'm locked in." In the photos, the shutters at the front of the shop named K's are clearly shut, and this thing is dark. I mean, it looks like a scene out of Dawn of the Dead. Like, it's empty. It's completely empty. It is thought the man triggered an alarm, which notified the police, who managed to get in touch with the shop's manager. After 10 police officers searched him to confirm he was not a shoplifter, he tweeted that he had finally managed to get out.
Damn.
Yeah.
You always think, like, I remember as a kid always thinking about, especially when it came to the mall, I'm sure there's a movie about it, but like, if I could just go into one of the bathroom stalls and climb up through those little square panelings up there and wait until after the mall closed down, you could like access all of the different stores and just like run amok in the mall. I don't know how the actual, like, the ceiling looks up above those things. Like, I don't know if you could just drop down from store to store. But, wow, I was one of the people that I always would, like, love to get stuck in a big-ass department store or a big-ass mall that was completely closed down and you just had the run of the place.
Another jewelry store story. So I once was at work and the power went out. And I wasn't allowed to leave. So I was stuck in a mall all night because you can't leave because you have to guard the fucking jewelry. Mm-hmm. So I literally was like, I had nothing to sleep on. I had made like a bed out of cardboard and like laid on it, and I was in a full suit and everything. So I was naturally like sending pictures to my wife with like my tie on my head and shit, trying to make the time pass. You know? And it was a very, very long night to sit in a jewelry store all night.
Holy crap. Yeah, I don't have any good stories like that. The closest, like, well, on Pensacola Beach, this is totally different. On Pensacola Beach, I've told you before, I was a manager of a Subway out there for a long time. And after Hurricane Ivan, I believe it was back in the early 2000s, 2004, something like that. And it had completely just ravaged the beach. As I said, Pensacola Beach is a barrier island, and during that particular storm, it had completely submerged the island all the way up to about where deadbolts are at on houses. That's how much water was covering everything in the beach, you know. So a couple days later, a select few of us, whoever the owner of the store had given permission to, we would go get licenses or tags and be able to go out onto the beach and kind of try to get the shit back together. But I remember going out there and just realizing, like, all of these businesses that we used to know, like, had just completely been gutted and destroyed. It was like a ghost town out there, and I opened up the door to the walk-in cooler, and like all of the Subway meat, like Firehouse, they slice their meat off of a big fresh chunk. Subway stuff comes in the bags already pre-sliced, and it had just turned into like gelatin. It was the grossest thing. So we're just hiking out all of these bags of wet meat product, and that was one of the times being at a place that was closed down. But for the most part, I've never been stuck in a closed business before.
Did it stink really bad in all the meat, or was it because it was sealed pretty good?
Oh, dude, every horrible smell you could think of. But it's hard to say what it was, right? Because there were literally fish inside the buildings. You know, when the water recedes, there's just dead fish everywhere where they had previously been able to swim around. But yeah, the whole island just smelled like just garbage and death. It was one of the grossest things ever. And that's one of the crazy things about like resort towns is like they're so nice, but that facade is kept. It's just such a thin veneer, because once the elements have a minute with it, it turns into a fucking third world country real quick. You know what I mean?
Anytime I see anything like that, I always think of zombie films. That's like where my brain completely goes every single time.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my next story, and this is, I don't know if you'll think it's funny. I don't really think it's funny. It was a little bit light news week so far, but 5-year-old brings crack cocaine to preschool, police say. Did you hear about this?
No, man, we had Legos and meth, and now a 5-year-old with crack cocaine.
Yeah, and the Legos with meth thing, you could see how it happened. This was like a good school, almost like a Catholic school or something like that. And what happened is pretty interesting. But as a couple people that kind of are familiar with trapping and stuff like that, this story plays out the way that you would think it was. In Philadelphia, police are investigating a 5-year-old boy brought out about 24 vials of crack cocaine into a preschool at a Roman Catholic church. Police say the boy told a teacher aide that at this church that the person who handed it to him told him to hide it. So he was walking into school. Some dude just comes up to him and said, "Hide this for me." The kid walks into school and ditches the stuff. Obviously, he got caught for it. The teacher's aide took the bag, which he suspected held drugs, informed the administrator. They called 911. No children came in contact with the drug, and no one was harmed. No arrests have been made. So basically, it was that situation where dude got spooked and was like, "I'm going to give these drugs to the one person they'll never think to look at."
Yeah, that's so he just handed them to a kid.
It's like the worst thing you could possibly do.
Yeah, it really is. There's a special level of hell, for that. I mean, granted, I knew kids who were like runners and stuff when they were that young.
Yeah.
Like they'd put it in their backpacks and stuff, like their parents would, because they were horrible fucking people. But yeah, that's dangerous. What if this kid would have messed around and been like, "What is this?" rock candy. You know, I mean, there's so many bad situations that could happen.
Victoria was like, it had to have been a crackhead. And I was like, Victoria, there is no crackhead that gave 12 vials of crack away to anybody.
No, he will stab you and bite your neck for 12 vials of crack. Like, he will not give that up to someone. That's a dealer.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a dealer, and dealers are notorious for just having a lack of respect for human life. I think that's one thing that I think both me and Caleb kind of can speak to, and I think it's one of the things that led me away from that, is just seeing like how willing to ruin people's lives people are for capitalism. And the funny thing is, you think once you get away from the drug culture that's going to go away. No, they still find ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely, as someone, you know, I've been pretty open about my past. I remember I had a moment where I was selling to someone, and not a proud moment, very like gut-wrenching moment, because I used the whole excuse, like I would justify my way of thinking of like, oh, I'm just a capitalist. I'm not the one with the problem. I'm just supplying a product. Like, I would justify.
Yeah, of course.
And there was one time a lady pulled up, and I sold her some stuff, and as she drove off, because then I was always like, well, they're only hurting themselves. As she drove off, there were two little kids in the back seat. And it was the biggest gut punch moment where like I felt like a awful human being, you know, and I should have felt that way. But the thing is, there's so many people who never have that feeling ever.
Well,
like, you know?
And dude, I mean, and I know it's different. I know there's so many different shades of gray, but like, soda manufacturers marketing fucking Coca-Cola to little kids or whatever. It's like people have no qualms about the health concerns or the health risks. They see kids as little consumers. I think a lot of times, not obviously in that situation, but it just seems like capitalism is always glorified getting rich by any means necessary kind of situation, you know. Obviously we look at what was his name, Joey Belford or whatever, the guy from Wolf of Wall Street, and you're like, yeah, that guy's a piece of shit, but also at the same time, like, seeing his lifestyle, it's like, but it's also kind of rad, you know. So I don't know, I think it's an interesting thing about being an American, where we have put our individual happiness and our individual success above everything else, you know.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I mean, obviously I'm like the biggest pro-capitalism guy ever, you know, but there are, of course, like anything, there's a lot of great that came from it, obviously, but there are the negative sides of it. And yeah, marketing stuff to little kids that it shouldn't be marketed towards, or stuff of that nature. It's pretty shady sometimes.
So
my next story,
yeah, go
speaking
ahead.
Speaking of capitalism, this is a pretty interesting job. The Queen has a dedicated servant to break in her shoes to avoid pesky blisters.
The Queen.
So,
The Queen of England.
The Queen of England has someone who he hires just to break in her shoes. It just proves, you know, that they live in an entirely different universe than we do. Her Majesty, quote, this comes from the Mirror UK. Her Majesty, one of the wealthiest and most photographed women in the world, has a vast members of staff who run her social media accounts, opens doors for her, manage her diary, and look after her beloved horses. And these are just some of the examples. And because she's the Queen, she also has a servant who helps break in her shoes for her. This might sound like an absolute pinnacle of privilege, but when you think about it, the Queen does not spend a lot of time on her feet at events. So they go ahead and have her break in her shoes.
Wait, okay, so we talking about she puts on the Queen's shoes and she walks them around, or she does like some sort of bending and stretching and plying them to break them in?
It doesn't really go into it doesn't go into details. It just says that her servant or her employee said her shoes have to be immediately comfortable. She goes to get someone to wear them, so they wear them around.
Okay.
It sounds like.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, man? I know you like fresh new kicks. Do you like it when they're broken, or do you still like that fucking?
I like them to be uncomfortable and hurt my feet a little bit.
Are you being for real, right?
Yeah, no,
yeah, I don't like
mine
broken either. I don't like mine broken either. I like them to still have that freaking, Just like, I just pulled these motherfuckers out of the box. Thank you very much. Broke in equals to me like they're worn. They need to be replaced.
That's exactly how I feel. And honestly, I think they get less. Like, I'm a big guy. I'm heavy. I'm 245. You know, I'm not a small man. The cushion on them gets worn down in my shoes, and so a brand new pair of shoes, they actually feel better to me. Like, I feel like I have support, and the more I wear them, it feels like the sole gets thinner, because that's a lot of weight to be, pushing down on a pair of shoes.
Bro, what do you think a average cost of a pair of shoes that the Queen would wear?
Oh my God, it's so fucking ridiculous. It's thousands probably.
Yeah, I heard somebody the other day, a celebrity, like an actor or something, and they were like, what's the most expensive shoes you've ever put money on? I think they were asking Seth Rogen, and he was like, I've spent way too much money on shoes, like $1,000. And I was like, that doesn't seem insane for a rich person. I mean, God, I would never be able to spend that kind of money on shoes, but for like a celebrity, that seems...
It seems
reasonable. Mild. Yeah. I don't know if it seems like. I don't know. I'm looking at a pair of Gucci's right now called Queen Margaret's, and they're $1,150.
Well, and then there's like limited edition. Remember when the Back to the Future shoes very first came out, and they were going for like $12,000? I don't know if you saw that.
Nah, man.
They were really cool, and now they even have them in self-lacing, where they actually self-lace.
That's wild.
They also have, you'll appreciate this as a movie nerd, they also have the Reeboks that Ripley wore in Aliens 2, the real high ones that are like boots.
100%.
That you can buy those now. They're like $1,200 if you can find them.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn, that's dope. That's dope.
So, yeah, it doesn't seem that insane, but I guarantee you, because I've been to some of these high-end stores, and I'm so weird. I own so many shoes. My shit's so cheap. I go to Burlington, Ross. I'm that type of person.
Yeah, you told me about that, and that inspired me to want to kind of do the same thing.
Well, I'm like, I'd rather buy 5 pairs of shoes for the price of one. That's just my mentality. And people go, how do you afford so many shoes? I'm like, because I don't pay a ton on them. But I have friends like that I know who've bought $2,000 shoes. Especially being in the sales world, it's not uncommon for people to flex money.
No,
that's a very,
I get it.
Very big part of it.
I get it.
And so, yeah, I've seen guys go into stores, buy 2 pairs of $900 shoes, $3,000 or $2,000 pair of shoes, and walk out with $3,000 worth of shoes.
This kind of shocks me that the most expensive one that I can find right here on Google Shopping is a $3,595 pair of Nike Off-White X-Blaze Mid, the 10 men's sneakers, size 14, coming in at about $3,600, that's a fuckload of money. But again, if you're an athlete, especially like a basketball player, and you want to show like the status thing, I think sneakers are really important to some people. It's not necessarily always my thing. I kind of like just really minimalist classic shit, but then every once in a while I do like flamboyant stuff. But I don't think I personally have ever dropped more than about $190 on a pair of shoes.
I just Googled world's most expensive shoes just out of curiosity, and holy shit, the top 10 world's most expensive shoes for women in 2018. Okay. The first one is Jada Dubai and Passion Jewelers Passion Shoes for $17 million.
Good Lord.
Debbie Wingham Hills for $15.1. House of Harry Winston Ruby Slippers, $3 million. Stuart Weitzman Rita Hayworth Heels, $3 million. Stuart Weitzman Cinderella Slippers, $2 million. My God, those are insane to me. Those
unbelievable.
Are just unreal. Like, I knew that happened. Like, the number 10, the least expensive on the top 10, is Stuart Weitzman Retro Rose Pumps for $1 million.
There's like always those Zergnet lists or articles or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about? Zergnet? But it's there was a point to that story, but it was it was basically just like, dude, oh fuck. We're just going to go ahead and move on from that until it comes up to me here in just a couple seconds.
Weird tangent that we went on.
And I remember what it was I was talking about. Shoes. We're talking high fashion, people. All right, so I guess my next story is this one's interesting in that I'm surprised that it doesn't conflict with your base, but we have a Danish politician that went to Pornhub to secure votes. So his name is Joachim B. Olsen. He's an Olympic shot put medalist running to be a member of Denmark's parliament, placed a campaign on Pornhub. He's from Copenhagen, and while most of the candidates in Denmark generally in the election are making good use of the internet, posting their promises on websites and social media, this one's gone a step further. Joachim B. Olsen, an Olympic shot put medalist who's been a member of the Folketing for the center-right liberal alliance since 2011, placed an ad bearing the party logo and encouraging people to vote for him on one of the world's most adult top websites, Pornhub. Official profile post, Olsen confirmed that he's responsible for the ad. Yes, it's me on Pornhub. And he said that election campaigns are serious, but there must also be some humor. Okay, so what do you think about, first of all, was this a smart idea?
I'm sure he'll get some votes from it. I don't know how much he's going to get from it, but it sounds like he just thought it was funny, which is kind of interesting, because that's kind of what I'm getting from him. It's like, yeah, I thought it was a funny idea.
Do you think it was a way to show him as a progressive, or do you think it was a way to show him as somebody with a sense of humor?
I think probably to show someone has a sense of humor.
Yeah, I feel like that as well. I feel like it will grab him headlines. It will make him more well-known. It kind of makes him likable among a lot of people. Just like, hey, what kind of crazy politician would put an ad on Pornhub? He doesn't seem to be the kind of like a lot of the people that would do something like that would have some seedy fucking past and like maybe some questionable choices that they've made or just some kinks or whatever. They like watching Norwegian ladies run around like horses and shit on Instagram. But he seems like a stand-up dude, and I do feel like this is more about the headlines that it's generating and the press that focuses on him.
Well, I think too, if Trump's taught us anything, that there is no such thing as a bad headline when you're running for office. It seems at this point, as long as the media is talking about you, you're getting promotion. It's kind of like how celebrities are, which celebrities and politicians have really blurred that line lately, over the last, I'd say 20 years specifically. But, and I think that's kind of that mentality. As long as they're talking about him, he's going to be making money. I mean, he's going to be getting traction, and he'll grab headlines. He's a name that we're talking about now. People have heard of even more. So,
do you think, as it mentioned, he's kind of from a more liberal party in Denmark, which big surprise there. But do you think that the read and the way that it was kind of presented to the world would have been dramatically different if he were a more right, more conservative person? Or do you think those people, that liberals would be able to have a sense of humor about that as well?
I don't know their political structure. I can only view it through our lens.
Absolutely.
And if he were an American politician, he would be dragged through the mud, because if he were Republican, same thing, he'd be loved if he was liberal. But that's just pretty standard, the double standard of the media. In my opinion, it's, I feel like both sides. Conservatives have a great sense of humor when they want to. Liberals have a great sense of humor when they want to. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's very generous. I think most people have shit senses of humor, and then there's like a couple of people on both sides that are like not as dumb as the other people. You're probably a lot more accurate right there.
So yeah, you got another one in the world of weird news headlines?
No, let's move into Miami, and this would, speaking of people's sense of humor, this would segue perfectly.
What the Florida? All right, you want to go ahead and kick this one off?
So, a Florida audience member calls 911 on Egyptian comedian for making Middle East jokes about forming a terrorist cell. So, there was this comedian, Ahmed, performed at Off the Hook Comedy Club in Naples, Florida. The caller then, he was up there making jokes. So, the caller leaves, calls 911, and accused the Egyptian comic of making a joke about Middle Eastern people in the audience forming a little terrorist organization. She said, or he said, I believe the caller said something like, "Oh, how many people here are from the Middle East?" And he said, "Oh, look, we have enough to form a terrorist organization." And so the person didn't find that funny, and then went out and proceeded to call the cops, and the cops actually showed up, which is pretty insane to me.
But they didn't show up ready to fuck this guy up.
They laughed at it.
Yeah, when they got there and they actually talked to him, it seemed like the situation kind of smoothed itself out immediately. The comedian himself had the wherewithal to kind of like stream the whole thing and make a joke about it. He was nice and cooperative with the police. This kind of gets into so many of the things that you and I love talking about when it comes to just kind of like what is okay in this current climate as far as jokes, what should and shouldn't be off limit. At what point should people, because you don't want to devalidate, and if a person's in fear of their safety or their well-being or thinks they might be at some sort of recruitment rally, it's their call to be able to, but to call 911 seems like the wrong number because there was not an emergency going on.
Well, and then according to the comedian, he never even said this joke. He's like, "I'll send you the video. This is not a joke of mine." You know?
He didn't actually make that joke.
No, he didn't even. He made a bunch of jokes about Middle Eastern people and about, like, he goes, like, I guess the joke that the closest thing is something. I'm paraphrasing it, obviously. I'm sure it's way funnier when a comedian tells it, but it's something like, "Oh, look how many," he was asking people where they're from. And he's like, "Man, looks like we got enough Middle Easterns in here." And then he paused to tell a couple of jokes. Like, that was the joke.
Yeah. And then there was another point where he said something about it takes just one. Yeah, to make a joke. That and so this implication that all it takes is one Middle Eastern person to do some terrorist act or whatever. I mean, this is, when I say post 9/11, this is like way post 9/11. And on one hand, I think he's probably kind of a hack, because if there's one thing I hate, it's Middle Eastern fucking comedians that have to get up there and do the like, just sit there and shit on Muslim culture. They're Muslim Americans and they want to make light of it, but if your whole stick is just doing Middle Eastern accents, it's just hard for me to like give that person a lot of respect.
I agree with you. That's the type of comedy I don't like, but it's so common. Like,
it is.
Most like Mexican American comics, it's all about being Mexican. Most Asian, it's about their parents, which I get you. You make jokes about your point of reference, so. But my thing is, so to speak about biases, my clear bias popped up. I'm admitting it right here. I heard, someone calls cops about a joke. And I was like, oh man, what oversensitive SJW snowflake. I went straight there. And this does not sound like this. This sounds like someone definitely, I'm assuming, definitely on the right.
Yeah.
And this leads perfectly into, there are people who knows, this person right here, if one of these quote unquote SJW types were to call a joke, they would be up in arms saying freedom of speech and this, and this. But then when it's something that offends them, those principles go out the window.
Yeah. And I do think you're right on this. In Florida, again, it's just such a mixed place. You can go to one venue and make, the very typical late night TV show host jokes, or you can do that exact same set a couple towns over, a county over, and it's going to go over completely differently. Like, I went and saw George Carlin before he passed away a couple years ago.
Nice.
It was a fantastic concert. It was at the Pensacola Singer Theater, smaller venue, and his opening act was a comedian that sang songs, which I'm just right off the bat, I'm not a big fan of that. But one of the songs that he did was kind of poking fun of NASCAR. not realizing, and I didn't realize, like, Pensacola's kind of a cultural epicenter here in the area, but everybody around us is very, very rural. And the dude all but got booed off the stage. I felt so bad for him just because he decided to make a couple yeehaw NASCAR jokes, you know?
And here's my thing is, even if you're a yeehaw NASCAR person, you should be able to laugh at yourself. Like, that's the whole point of comedy.
Yes.
You know?
George Carlin came out and basically was like, yeah, I guess my brand of humor isn't going to be for everybody, and if it's not, then fuck you. You know what I mean? And then he started into his set, and I was just like, that's why George Carlin is the best.
Could you imagine today's climate? How almost, if he was at like his peak during today's climate, I think he'd be just as controversial as he was when he was at his peak, or maybe even more.
Because he was a traditional liberal, but still confrontational as fuck. Like, I miss that, man. I miss those George Carlin liberals. Like, I really do. Like, those people who were literally, what that to me was, I'm sure for you, for our generation, that's when I think of the left, or the traditional Democrat left, that's what I think of, you know? And it's just, I think he would be, I mean, one of the greats. You know, what was it, the 7 jokes or whatever you can't, seven words you can't say on television.
Yeah. Like, such a brilliant comedian. And yeah, I would, I think we need someone kind of like him again.
It's a tough situation to navigate, and we'll come back around to that, as far as, like, we are now so beholden to the people that consume our content, and it's an interesting time that we're in. But while we're in Florida, I saw that a Florida man live streamed an argument with Walgreens staff before smacking a baby in the head and saying, "I didn't do nothing." Did you see this?
No. Oh, if that was my baby, that guy would be laid the fuck out.
Oh my goodness, dude. It's not, you can't see the baby get hit. I'm looking at it honestly as being more like he accidentally hit the baby in the head with something light, like an empty box of Snickers, you know, out of the case. Yeah. Like, he swung it back and it accidentally hit the baby. Didn't have any injuries, which is good.
Okay.
It doesn't justify the rest of what happened by any means, but Florida man's police in Florida have arrested a man who has live streamed himself committing a series of crime inside a Walgreens. On Wednesday, Ryan Greenlee assaulted a male clerk, became hostile toward the staff, and hit a newborn baby in the head with a box before claiming he didn't do nothing. The perpetrator live streamed the bizarre series of events on Facebook, starting with the moment he entered the Walgreens branch in Ulmerton Road, Largo, Florida. Once inside the store, he looked to purchase 2 packs of beef jerky. He waved his money around at the camera like idiots so often do, but then it became clear he didn't have enough funds to pay for the items. So when they realized he couldn't afford to pay for the beef jerky, he was asked to leave, and he immediately became belligerent. He was charged with disorderly while asked to leave, and started throwing items over the counter. Off the counter flew a box which hit a 2-month-old baby in the head. The mom said she was angry. The arrest affidavit states that while the confrontation between Greenlee and the store can be seen on video, the exact moment when the baby was hit was not captured. So you can't really tell what he's doing, but he's this 22-year-old guy that just talks like Florida trash, and he gets back into his buddy's car after this whole thing, and you can hear his friend like, "Man, you took that too far. You shouldn't have done that." And he's like, "All I did was go into the store, man." And it's like, why are you fucking talking like that, you fucking idiot? But anyways, I don't know. What first? So the big thing is, what do you think about people who are fucking dumb enough to broadcast their crimes on social media, thinking it's a prank video?
Yeah. So, you know, my recent hatred for social media has just like risen to new levels, and this is a perfect example of it. I don't even know if this behavior would have even happened had he not had the ability to stream it. You know. I feel like sometimes you're seeing more and more people doing dumb shit for likes, for clicks, because they have the mentality that there's no such thing as like bad clicks. There's no such thing as bad likes or whatever. And you see this all the time anymore. People live streaming crazy ass shit for a couple of likes. And it's unreal to me.
People like Logan Paul jump into my mind immediately. Like, there was the Suicide Forest thing, but that was just kind of a micro of a much bigger problematic series where he just goes over there and kind of harasses people on camera to get a rise out of them, and then he benefits off of it. While it could probably just like ruin other people's day, it makes them look like an insensitive kind of person. I do think there's a really good way to be able, like, I like Jimmy Kimmel's Live Witness News. Are you familiar with that segment?
No, I'm not.
On the Jimmy Kimmel show, they will say, this didn't actually happen, but we went and asked 1,000 people out on the streets what they thought about the fact that Donald Trump did a suplex on fucking Martha Stewart at the middle of the last week's WWE thing or whatever, just some random question. Yeah. And they go and interview people, and people don't like to act like they don't know what the fuck they're talking about with current events, so they will literally just lie, just tell this whole fake narrative. And the interviewer is asking, like, so where were you when you found this news out? Oh, I was, like, with my mom. And how did your mom react to it? Oh, she was, and it's just so funny to reveal that, we can be led easily into different things. But I feel like this, I don't know, man, this whole idea of, like, being able to stream what you think is funny is not what everybody thinks is funny. So I feel like a lot of times it skirts into the realm of being, like, mean.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, even when, like, okay, I'm sure we've, throughout this entire experience of us doing this, we've said some stuff that's offended people or people don't find funny, and that's fine, but we're not actively out there harming other individuals. There's a huge difference between doing that. I'm such a respectful person in the streets. Like, I never give anyone any shit. I open doors. I'm that type of person. And so it's such an asshole move to literally either physically or just emotionally, like, harass other people. I even personally don't even like, and this is a big thing, actually, I see it more now. It used to be kind of more of like, not bring politics, but like a lefty thing. Now it seems like more of a right-wing YouTube thing where they go up and interview random people in the street about politics, Mm-hmm. And they're a lot of them to me just come off very mean-spirited, where it's specifically designed to be like, look how stupid this person is.
They've only grabbed the dumb ones, the people who immediately are like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That doesn't make for good television. So yeah, there's a lot of people that know what they're talking about being left out of those.
They edit those out. There's one guy I've seen who does, he's I forget his name. I've watched a couple of them, and it's not like gotcha stuff. He's like, we'll sit there and have a debate with someone, and he will leave it all in. If a conservative says something stupid, he leaves it. If a conservative says something smart, if a liberal says something smart, and it gives you a much more realistic view of there are idiots everywhere, and there's smart, educated people who disagree with each other too.
Yeah.
But people cut out the smart, educated people to disagree, and it just comes off mean-spirited to me. I don't really like it. Even bothers me. And I used to go on rants about it on Twitter because it bothered me when I had my Twitter. When people would like take a picture of someone and they'd be like, this person's fat or this person's this. I'm like, these people are just out minding their own fucking business. Like, you're literally putting their face all over to make fun of them for a couple of retweets. Like, you're a piece of shit if you do that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's like, that in particular is just cruel. Like, when so many memes that are going around, it's been the same person's face or whatever got for so long, and it's like they'll take this one person who's not, conventionally attractive and have a million different variations on the same meme, and this person has to eventually confront it and be like, well, I guess I'm like a really ugly piece of shit, and that sucks,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone has, but I could see someone like killing themselves over one of these memes, where they just are, it's not cool. And it's one of those things, as I think any decent human being has that reaction. Maybe when you're younger and you see stuff and you're like, oh, I want to make fun of it or whatever. But you see like grown ass men and women sharing memes like this, and you're like fucking 30 years old and you're making fun of a 20-year-old's appearance. Like, you're a loser.
So, There was a story that I saw yesterday. It actually was accompanied by a video. You might have this in yours, but Florida man lawyer kicks raccoon off his boat into the sea because Florida. Did you hear about this?
No, I did not.
I don't know how this happens, but a lawyer and his buddy were 22 miles off the coast. They were way out there doing some deep sea fishing, and out of nowhere, their camera comes on, and there's this raccoon just like scurrying around on the deck, running back and forth, not knowing what to do. You can tell the dudes are flipped out, and they're just like, "Get the fuck off our boat, raccoon! Get out of here! Get out of here!" But that said, they didn't really have the tools or the capability of capturing it, and so they shoot the motherfucker off the side of the boat. Which, granted, a 22-mile swim for a raccoon, probably not the most likely thing that's going to happen. That raccoon's fucking dead as doornails. And, of course, there was a huge outcry on the internet. At face value, what do you say about this?
I say kick that little fucker off the boat. I mean, what else are you going to do? What are they going to do? Set up a trap? And it's just unrealistic. Yeah, it sucks. I don't know where it came from. Sucks you got to die, but what are you going to do?
What about try to feed it?
Yeah, no, I'm not feeding the little bastard.
But would you think that you could earn the things, not trust, but like make it be docile?
No. Have you ever watched Turtle Man by chance?
Nah.
Okay, you're gonna be obsessed with it. So Turtle Man, I think it's like Call of the Wild. It's about a guy who does humane animal trapping. He's a reality show, and this dude is like, I don't know where he's from. He looks like a Florida man though. Like he's missing all his teeth, and I've watched him try to respect and like lure out raccoons. They are not nice animals. Like they fuck him up every episode when he's trying to remove a raccoon. Like
really?
Oh yeah, they are vicious.
So I've never encountered one. I always assume that they're a lot like possums. I think that's kind of what I've heard as far as temperament and stuff like that, although I think raccoons are infinitely more cute. But kind of to take it away from Florida real quick, but stay on the raccoon topic, Chicagoland residents warned of a zombie raccoons that are walking on two legs and killing stuff. So apparently there's this new disease that's inflicting these raccoons. It's called... it doesn't say, but apparently it turns them into zombies. And they'll go after stray cats and puppies, and even if they eat out of your pet's food, it's potentially contagious, and it causes distemper.
Holy shit.
And makes these things crazy. So they lose it, and then they start attacking shit, and then they die. So, yeah, I guess that kind of goes back to the fact of, like, you don't want to fuck with a raccoon, but you and I have talked about it before. You know I'm a little bit of a softie when it comes to animals, and, like, I would like to think that I would be able to use some sort of, even if it was, like, bait fish, or if I brought a ham and cheese sandwich, get it in a situation where the thing had to get to the food. You're a hunter or a fisher, and then cover that bitch with a bucket or something.
Yeah, I'd be the person who shoot it off the boat. I'm not going to even lie and sit here and say that. And not that I would like want to kill a raccoon. I don't want to kill animals at all. Unless they taste good, then I'll kill the fucker.
No, 100, as you should.
But at the same time, like we have raccoons are everywhere in Denver, especially in our neighborhood. It's very like trees everywhere. They're big, vicious little bastards. They're kind of scary little shits.
So the other day, my mom sent me a text message, and it had a couple of images in it. I opened it up, and the first image was a silverware drawer pulled open with a baby raccoon in it. Not a raccoon, excuse me, a baby possum in it. When I say baby possums are bigger than the biggest fucking rats you're going to see normally, you know? But it was still kind of in that cute phase, but it's chilling in my grandmother's silverware drawer. I'm like, how the fuck did this possum just randomly end up in your silverware drawer? Luckily, my cousin Sarah was over there, and they were able to use like a little fish bait net and scoop this raccoon into one of those like catch and release cages and get it out of the house. But dude, I think I would have a heart attack if I was going to eat dinner and I opened up my drawer and found a fucking, I don't know, 3-pound rodent in there.
Yeah, no, that would freak me out. Like, I don't know. There's possums. I'm not really familiar with them except for what I've seen. They're just creepy as shit anyway.
They're mean looking fucking things. So have you ever had anything invasive end up in your house? Some sort of big animal that you can think of?
Nothing big. I mean, just like in back home in New Mexico desert, you get little mice all the time, and that's like the only thing. And my mom would always freak out as a kid, but like nothing that I can think of. Oh, rattlesnakes. I mean, that's a thing back home, everywhere. You'd hear them underneath the porch and stuff. Those are probably the most terrifying thing.
Yeah, I've never had one actually infiltrate the house in many ways. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I'm just I stay away from animals as much as we do have. This is not a terrifying thing, but we do have the fattest little rabbit that lives in our backyard, and he's cute as shit. But that's not a scary thing.
It's like a wild brown rabbit, like a North American.
Yep, and he is fat as hell. I'm like, what the hell are you eating? We do have a garden out back, with like where we just grew like onions and shit, and I think he's just surviving off that.
Really?
Yeah. He's fat.
Is onions the only thing you got growing back there?
We started to do some other stuff, and then we realized we're lazy and we don't like gardening, so we forgot about the garden. But once you plant onions, you're good.
Yeah, right. Like potatoes or something, it's hard for them not to grow.
So we just have onions out there now, and like I think that's about it. We planted zucchini and some green chili and stuff, but those required a little more work, and we haven't even done gardening in over a year. And I think he's just surviving off that.
I am not a green thumb guy, but I'm pretty at peace with that. Victoria, on the other hand, she wants to be creating the Garden of Eden over here, and has no skills when it comes. Like, I think she's killed more plants than she's grown, which is she's gonna love this part, I'm sure.
No, my wife, so that's how the garden started. We moved into this new place, and there's like a little garden bed. And she's like, we should grow some stuff. And I was like, sweet, let's do it. We spent so much money buying all these little plants that did not last. With a couple of green chilies we got off them, a couple of jalapenos, and some onions. She is the plant serial killer. Like, they just die.
That's good. Well, at least I'm not alone on that.
Yeah, it's so expensive, too.
So what else do we got going on in Florida? You got a good one?
No, I think that's it for me on the Florida.
All right. I got, you did the Muslim terrorist one. That was pretty good. That guy, man, I hadn't listened to any of his comedy to know. It sounds like his jokes would have been a lot more like subversive. I don't know, 2010 or something like that. It's like we're still doing the Arab Muslim jokes. Okay, fine, I guess. In Florida, that sounds about right though too.
Like someone will freak out over it.
Yeah. So last one in Florida, and we will go ahead and move on to our topics. This headline comes from the Miami CBSLocal.com, and it says that there was a man found at a park playing basketball in the buff, and he said it helped him improve his skills, and that's the reason why he did it. A park employee said that he saw a man playing basketball while at the buff at Candyland Park in Longwood, in Longwood, Florida. He was 29 and charged in Polk County and is being held on $500 bond. Is this a funny story?
It's kind of funny. I mean, it's insane. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm assuming again, like most of these stories, it's a lot of drugs involved.
Gotta be a lot of drugs involved. And I mean, if there were kids out there, then, maybe it scarred them. But I think our idea of what scarring somebody is by the idea of them seeing a naked body, we got to change that. It's like when this guy's getting charged with like exposing his sexual organ. And it's like, that's a much, much more disturbing way of putting he was running around in his birthday suit. You know what I'm saying? Just the way that
it makes it sound like he ran up on someone and like flashed them, which is horrible. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is still awful. I'm not saying that, but I do agree with we got to change. I'm sure. Well, I don't know. My wife, I know, has way less hangups about nudity being from another country. Is your wife kind of the same way?
No, because the other way. But there are a lot of They're one of the few that are a little more puritanical about, or a little more. I don't want to say prude, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
my wife being
prudes.
like African, it's like it's funny because they are much more conservative, much more religious by far. Very very Christian, and but they don't view nudity as like a sexual thing constantly. Like
Right.
boobs are just boobs,
Yeah.
or they'll have like a celebration where like someone dances, a man dances, and he's completely nude. And it's just seen through such a different lens that my wife was like if she's the type of person where it would literally a story that I remember. I was like, my wife was changing one day, and oh, I know what it is. I was sitting there talking to my mom. We were like getting ready for, um, uh, I think it was at our wedding ceremony. My wife had two dresses, so she's changing, and I'm sitting there. We're already married at this point, and my mom's standing there talking to me, and my wife just starts getting naked. I'm like, not that I want. I'm like, this is a little weird to me, just being in a room with my mom and my naked wife having a conversation.
Uh-huh.
And so I got up and left. But like, that's how my wife's like, oh, you're so sensitive, whatever, you weird American. She's like, it's no big deal because people just view culturally nudity so different than like we do.
And it is something that we've touched on with the Mortal Kombat stuff last week. It's weird. On one hand, I think that it seems silly that there's this societal construct that it should be sexualized. But then sexuality plays such a major role in reproduction that if the sight of a naked woman didn't arouse us, then would our libido even be high enough to sustain keeping the human race reproducing? So it's like this weird catch-22, you know what I'm saying? But at the point that the nude body gets so normalized that there is no taboo, does that take a little bit of the desirability away from it?
I would say 100% takes a lot of desire away, and I often wonder, we talked about the story about millennials not having sex, and I've often wondered maybe because porn's more relevant in their generation, it's not as enticing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find myself diving into like kind of the existential parts of this stuff sometimes, and just like it's just weird. Me and you are trying to kind of look at everything from a far enough distance and try to make sense of it just on its most base level. And a lot of these things are really I don't know how to explain it other than like the Florida man, for example. We read those stories in hopes of finding the funny ones. And I think people comb through, I think people in Florida, a lot of them, it's their jobs to kind of comb through the headlines and find the ones that read funny. And then you go into the story and it's like, this isn't necessarily funny, but because of this Florida man thing, we've all kind of we've primed ourselves to be like, ha ha ha, idiots in Florida. Did you hear that there's actually a lawsuit right now going on?
For Florida?
Yeah, for people cashing in on the whole Florida man thing. And who would do that, for one thing? That's disgusting.
I know, man. We better get our lawyers ready.
So one guy has a Florida man brand. Another guy has a Florida man brand. And the defense of one of them is like, you can't own that. And I don't know if you can. It seems like it would be really hard to patent Florida man. It seems like everybody should have fair use to that, but there's these companies that are coming out that are using those headlines and using Florida man on their t-shirts and stuff like that. And so somebody feels like they're missing out on money, but me and Caleb are sitting here doing Florida man headlines over here, and I am sure that we're missing out on money. So if you guys want to contribute to our Patreon, that'd be great.
We're over here making millions is what we're making. We're going to go buy those $14 million gold diamond shoes.
Yeah. All right. I think I kicked it off last time, and I would actually love for yours to be the first video that pops up this week. So let's talk a little bit about censorship.
So this is something that, first of all, it seems like it's more in the conscious now because mainly Trump's always talking about, Twitter censoring conservatives. It's something that's been on my radar for like 7 years. This is nothing new. It's been going on with these tech companies, specifically banning more conservative ideologies. You'll see it. They'll even like ban pro-life video. Yeah, you'll see like they'll ban like a pro-life video, which is not like extreme. They're nothing like crazy videos. They're just like pro-life videos. 50% of the country thinks that way anyway. For me personally, I don't think they should ban. But my real question is, and this is something that normally I have a opinion where I'm like, this is how it should be. This is where I stand. The liberal in me, and people are going to think this is reversed. The liberal in me says the government should probably say, no, you can't. You can't ban these people or stop their speech. The conservative in me is actually the one who's saying, well, they're a private entity and they're a company. They should be allowed to run their platform, whatever they want, and let the free market dictate it. If people don't like using Twitter, get the fuck off Twitter. And I just don't know where the hell I stand on this issue. I've jumped around a million times and I cannot get my bearing on it.
Isn't that something? Yeah, it's a very fascinating thing. I agree with both of your points. I think that's a really valid, kind of way of looking at it on both sides. And I try to always take the stance that I'm willing to listen and try to take in both sides of it. And I've told you before, I'm not 100% sure that what they're doing is banning conservatives or trying to shut down conservative ideology. I think it's supposedly the spread of misinformation. I think the idea is that there are certain groups that they're targeting because not necessarily their rhetoric, which maybe is unfair, but maybe it's just, for example, let's use Alex Jones just because he's popular. Mm-hmm. For example, maybe it's not what he says that crosses the line. But if you can see that his followers and their subreddits and the comments and things are escalating and misinterpreting and starting to kind of galvanize in a way that could be seen as disruptive, then I understand why people would want to shut it down. And I don't mean disrupting the status quo or thought or something like that, but if it looks like it could escalate into something that was more dangerous. But it also, and I've said this before, by only eliminating voices on one side and not having a couple of sterling examples of like, oh, hey, they didn't just do that. Twitter does this to liberals and extreme leftists as well. Then we wouldn't be able to say it's perpetuating the narrative that the thought police are controlling information. So I can see from a Republican's perspective or from a conservative's perspective, it's like they're only shutting down our people. How is there not an agenda? And I said to you the other day, and I think both of us still don't 100% agree or see eye to eye on it, but that I do feel like it is that the fear of the Second Amendment nuts going and doing something violent is greater than the group of, and I know you brought up Antifa, and I know that there have been mass shooters that were not conservatives, but it seems like the group of people that's anti-gun are going to be much more likely to be the ones committing mass shootings than the ones that are afraid that everybody's going to take their guns.
Well, and then to like kind of unpack also, so did you, by chance, I would recommend watching, did you get a chance to watch the head of Twitter, Tim Pool, and Joe Rogan all on the same podcast?
Mm-mm.
So I love Tim Pool. Tim Pool is a liberal, though. He goes to bat because and literally, essentially what Twitter really does say, if you watch the whole podcast, is like, yeah, we're biased, deal with it. That's kind of their answer, Mm-hmm. Like they pretty much don't say that, obviously, but like he brings up so many examples, and an example he used that, so you said they're trying to stop the spread of misinformation. That was kind of their defense as well. And he said, you can get banned for saying a man is a man and a woman is a woman and a man is not a woman. You can get banned for that on Twitter. He's like, you are taking a political stance with that issue, period. He's like, you've decided that. or I don't know if you were familiar with the Learn to Code debacle that happened on Twitter.
No.
So a bunch of years ago, when when production jobs dropped, the media was like wrote a bunch of articles saying like, learn to code, that's the future, those jobs are disappearing. It was very arrogant and entitled, like asshole articles. So fast forward, when all these not social media, but all these journalist sites are falling and all these journalists are freaking out. So people started tweeting directly at journalists who were bitching, hey, learn to code, like as a joke. Then Twitter got to the point where if you even tweeted the term learn to code, not even at anyone, they would ban you or at least give you a strike. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I just feel like, but at the same time, my thing is they are a private entity, but I don't know. I literally, like, ironically, I feel like the sides have switched on this. I feel like the liberal stance should be, hey, the government should step in. That's technically the liberal stance, but that's the conservative stance on this issue for whatever reason. The conservative stance should be, hey, it's a free market. If you don't like it, don't fucking use it. And I feel like I'm sick of Twitter, not necessarily for that. I'm just sick of it. That's the reason why I deleted the personal account. I'm like, I fucking hate this site, And my thing is, I don't know. Do you remember Sarah Jong, that for the New York Times, all the tweets that came out with her? Do you remember this journalist? So literally, you can find all of it if you search Sarah Jong about like, they're just like super racist against white men tweets, which is okay, and nothing happened to her. She has her account. She's never been banned. She's never received strikes. None of this, and it's, to me, a counterpoint that I was having this conversation with someone brought up, and they said, I'm like, well, hey, they're private, because I took the conservative stance. I'm like, they're a private company. They can ban whoever the fuck they want. And one of my more liberal friends actually brought it up. He goes, so would you be okay with a cell phone company banning people from talking on their phones with certain ideas? And I'd be like, absolutely not. And he's like, social media is kind of the new form of communication. How do you feel about something like that?
I agree. Fundamentally, it's not a debate. It's like if a private company decides that they don't want your ass there and they're not discriminating because of your race, gender, fucking, that list of things that they can't discriminate against you for, it's 100% their right. If cell phone companies started doing it, that would suck. But at the same time, it still falls under it's their right to do it. We don't read the TOCs. It probably says that within the term somewhere. Like, if you do things that we don't like, we can cancel you for with no consequence for that. So, I don't know, man. It is like, my biggest fear about this is that it gives ammunition to the most radicalized subsect of the right wing base.
I would agree.
It's not the regular folks that, because you can still go get Alex Jones. You can still go find a lot of InfoWars. There's other places where he has an outlet to do this. But what it does is it furthers this idea of the deep state. It makes people even more suspicious to the fact that, like, they're trying to control information, and some person deems that this information isn't healthy for the world to know, then all of a sudden they're controlling and filtering out the information that we get. But that said, there is an accountability for journalists to say things that you got to cite your work. You've got to have more than one source and all these things. And these editorials where people would just go on a rant and say a million things that are in themselves dangerous with no sort of backing, and people are as dumb and as impressionable as we all are or all can be when it comes to emotions. I feel like it's the person who creates the content that has to take the moral high ground and try to be upstanding journalists and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a tough one, man.
So one of my fears is actually kind of a similar fear that you had. Like, I feel like this gives ammo, but I also feel like this radicalizes people. So when we start saying this, you're no longer allowed in society, which social media is kind of society right now for a lot of people. And when we say you're no longer allowed in society to a group and we kick them off, well, now they're no longer getting any points of view of the liberal side, and they're falling into more conservative voices. And they are now more susceptible to the most extreme voices within that movement, you know? And when you kind of banish people to these dark corners of society, they tend to get more radicalized, not less.
Yeah.
When you kick them out of polite conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if the girl from the Westboro Baptist Church, her granddad, I guess, started it. She was very extreme. She was actually de-radicalized via Twitter because she was on Twitter saying hateful shit constantly. Crazy. She'll tell you, like, I watched this story with her, crazy shit. And a guy reached out to her via Twitter, was like, hey, I just kind of want to talk to you. And they started having this conversation for months and months and months and months back and forth. And her views started to change. She left the Westboro Baptist Church and now like campaigns against them and against that cult-like mentality. She became a positive voice for that instead of just shutting her out and being like, you're the worst type of person. Actually welcoming her into the conversation. And I'm a firm believer of I would much rather welcome someone into the conversation that I'd heavily disagree with and talk to them. You're not going to save them all. You're not going to change the hearts and minds of every person you meet. It's not going to happen. But you're definitely not going to do it if you just refuse to even talk to them or associate with them. And I feel like that just radicalizes them and makes them scarier people, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% agree. I'm curious to see how all of this does end up playing out, because there always has been this kind of tit for tat idea. I wonder if there are going to be people that go in and start singling out tweets from previous, in this example, more liberals, so that they can say, doesn't this constitute hate speech? Shouldn't this person be deplatformed? They've been spreading misinformation in one way or another. Like anti-vaxxers, that's pretty bad misinformation. Can they get those people out of there? I don't know. But then it's like, I don't know. And then at that point, it's like we all have to watch what we say because we don't want to ruffle any feathers. And that comes all the way back around to just that stupid meme that caused me grief this morning. Is just like, it's hard. It's hard. With 1 million people, you're never going to be able to make everybody happy. And with so many people just constantly on the grind trying to get as much content out as possible, lots of times sensationalism is going to trump the well-articulated project that took days to get together, investigative journalism. None of that is worth near as much as just a person who can yell and get emotional about things that they care about,
Well, and I feel like social media and marketing companies specifically have, and we've seen this, and this is why you're seeing actually predominantly more rage-based digital news outlets are falling. They're all falling apart right now. And they capitalized on the rage bait, clickbait culture to make a lot of money. And I think there's one of them, I don't know which one it is. It's Vox or it's Mike.com. So Mike.com, I don't know if you're familiar with them. So they were like kind of the one of the people who really push the more left-wing rage, everything's offensive narratives. It was started by two conservative libertarian guys who were just capitalists. They didn't care. They're like, I just want to make money, and they figured out rage is the best way to make money. So it wasn't a principled thing. They were like, hey, if we can get this group of people angry enough, they retweet it more. It apparently, like middle-aged moms are the most active group on all social media, and they share the most. And so there's all these algorithms to see how they can offend groups like that specifically. Like, hey, it's middle-aged moms, so let's write a lot of articles about sexism and how this man said this, and isn't this horrible, to get reshares so we can get more advertisers.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's pretty insane to me. I don't know where I stand on this issue. I feel like a big flip flopper, and think I'm going to continue to just go back and forth. But I am like you. I'm very curious to see how this rides out.
I'm a huge, both of us, huge proponents of the Second Amendment or the First Amendment and being able to have free speech. And you and I are also both intelligent enough to know that it doesn't apply to private corporations, but it creates a culture. It changes the way that information is being distributed. And I fear that it's going to push people further towards the fringes. If they have to go search down a dark alley to find people that kind of align up their political views, there's no telling what else is lurking down that alley, I guess.
Oh, I said it's been shown through a lot of studies that people who use social media, specifically like Twitter is a big one, tend to be more radical in their views than your average member of society. I sent you that video. I think it was actually Tim Pool, the guy I love, that I sent you, where he was talking about the super left outrage culture is like 10%, like 8% of the population. But on Twitter, it's like 60%.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And how they're like people. But I do agree with you. Like, they're a private corporation, but I do think it shapes culture to where groupthink, and you need to fit in within these parameters. And all ideas are bad ideas until they're good ideas, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. We're at a really interesting time right now, and the internet plays a major factor in so many of the things that we talk about on this show. We talked a little bit about Game of Thrones, I want to say last week, maybe it was the week before that, and I have been a diehard fan. Pretty much ride or die since season 6 is when I first started watching it live. I don't go all the way back to season 1. So before season 6 came out, I binged 1 through 5, and then I started catching 6, week to week, and 7 week to week, and now I'm on season 8, and I've been watching it week to week, and it's amazing. I don't know how your feed has looked like over the past 2 weeks, but my Facebook group, Movies Are Terrible, has basically become the Game of Thrones chat room. You know what I mean? And it's intense. People who are on both sides of the thing are extremely passionate. There's been a lot of debates, a lot of heated arguments, and it seems like that a lot of the criticisms are valid, while at the same time, a lot of the people who are the most critical of it are just totally dismissing all of the amazing aspects of this series. The first time I ever saw this kind of outrage culture in my life was with The Last Jedi. Well, The Last Jedi had a petition started where the fans, the quote-unquote fans, they wanted to get Rian Johnson to redo that film or have somebody else redo that film. With this season of Game of Thrones, there is a petition that's reached right around 1 million people so far that have signed it, saying that we want to rewrite the last season of Game of Thrones and have it redone with quote-unquote competent writers. There's other examples, right? I know. Can you think of any other examples right now? We were talking about.
So one of my first experience, not first, but one of the ones that popped in my head was the 2014 Ninja Turtles. I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan.
And then we have Sonic, and then there was the other one that you said, Mass Effect.
Mass Effect. It seems like there's a new one every other day.
So as far back, the first one I remember is when Michael Keaton was cast for Batman. And then you think about the outrage around Heath Ledger as the Joker. So fan outrage over things ahead of time is not a new thing. But first of all, what do you think about the effectiveness of petitions?
Well, I think now apparently they're working, which is something I personally don't like. I always think of that quote from, I think it was Ford, where he said, if I would have asked people what they would have wanted, they would have just asked me for a faster horse. And there's people who create and there's people who don't create. And I don't think you're allowed to criticize, but I really think the artist should create it.
Yeah. These guys are the professionals, and that's what always bothers me is when you're talking about, let's just throw a number out there, 150 million fans. How could any ending satisfy all 150 million of those fans. There's no outcome that is going to check the boxes on everything that each of these different people want. That is an impossible, thankless task. Well, so I don't agree with that. You asked me. I've had serious problems with Game of Thrones season 8. I don't dislike it. It stings a little bit because I'm all for the decisions that have been made have been fine. I feel like there's been a lot of inevitability building up to where we are now in the series. That said, I felt like the movie itself and the fan base itself misread many of the clues, many of the elements of foreshadowing. They looked at these things as victories, as a hero doing something that was fair and just, not realizing that this character was kind of losing part of their morality. Does any of this make sense to you? Am I talking vague enough that...
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's not, familiar with the series at all, it's all in... Well, I don't really have social media, so it hasn't been my feed, but everyone around me at work's been talking about it nonstop, and everyone seems to be pretty pissed about it.
A lot of people seem to be mad about Khaleesi's turn in the last episode.
Well, here's my thing, is as someone who I love storytelling, I think it's pretty... Misdirection is great. Foreshadowing that you can misread is great. I love shit like that. And to me, I feel like people, and they do this often, they create a storyline that they want in their own head. And then that storyline doesn't meet that. And they're like, well, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. No, that was what was supposed to happen. What wasn't supposed to happen was your weird fanfic that you created in your head.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And on top of that, though, I do not dismiss these people that have been so invested for 8-10 years. And the fact that they feel like the actual objective quality of the writing has gotten a little bit more stodgy, which it has. That's something that I can speak to, because the Daenerys thing, I always expected it to happen. It was always being foreshadowed that it was going to happen, but we didn't get to feel it in a gradual enough transition. It was like every time she did something very like what a conqueror would do, it was treated as if like, hell yeah, girl power. And that was never the point of it. There was always supposed to be this underlying, like, this is scary. Huh?
Yeah. Like an underlying uneasiness about it.
Correct. But the music cues sometimes deceived you and let you think that this was like a good thing, because I think so many people started to kind of project like, oh, she's a symbol of female empowerment. Well, every character on this show is incredibly flawed. I don't think any of them make good role models, and you shouldn't name your kids after them. But anyways, I thought it was audacious for people to want to call these guys incompetent writers. They've given us 7.5 seasons worth of the best TV on television, and then a half a season of a series that's better than everything else on television, but just not as good as what the other seasons were.
Well, and that's my thing. Is if I'm a firm believer, if you don't like the show, go write a better show. If you don't like someone's podcast, go make a better podcast. Like, that's the way you should do. Instead of, well, I'm just going to go ahead and just change, I want to change their vision. That's their vision. Like, it's their product. We have this weird thing in fandom now where people feel ownership over a product. And I get it. I always say it, I have Ninja Turtles and anime tattoos. I've been let down by both of them, but that's their story to tell. It's not mine. It's my story to take, but it's not my story. And I feel like too many people feel ownership, like almost like a creator ownership over something that they did not create.
Yeah. So what was one of the movies that you mentioned? How did that whole thing play out?
So Ninja Turtles, as the biggest Ninja Turtle fans, I wasn't angry at the creators. I was angry at the fan base. So the new 2014 movie came out, heavily influenced by the IDW comics. No one knows that because no one reads the fucking comics. So heavily influenced by the IDW comics. The character designs, people are like, they are terrifying, heavily influenced by the Michael Zulli comic book designs. No one knows that because they don't read the comics. And it had all these nods to a lot of comics as well as a lot of nods to the original stuff as well. There are problems with the film, 100%. Just like, guess what? Every Ninja Turtle film sucks. I love them, but they all suck.
Yeah.
And so it was that. So we had this really good first attempt. It was a good 2014 movie. The internet, and it did great. Critical failure, commercial success. Twitter exploded. People freaked out about the designs. They freaked out that it was too serious. They freaked out about everything. And they told him apparently that he was going to be able to do more freedom on the second one as long as this one was successful. Huge commercial success. They can't him because Twitter. Because people are freaking out and tweeting at Paramount all the time. So they're like, all right, you guys get it. You will get something true to that dumb 80s cartoon. That the original Ninja Turtle cartoon is unwatchable. It's garbage. As someone who loved it growing up, it's bad. It's a bad show. So they do a show that is they do a second movie, Out of the Shadows, that is very, 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 very similar to the original cartoon in tone and everything. Yeah. It's unwatchable. It's so bad.
I prefer it.
Really?
Yeah, of course. Because my frame of reference and my experience are different than yours. I was always the cartoon guy.
Well, and then that movie tanked, the second one.
Yes.
So they had to kill it.
Yeah.
Because people don't know what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you listen, it's like, who are we listening to? The 1 million people that signed the petition or the X million people that didn't sign the petition? It's like, yeah, there's some really angry people here, but obviously a lot of people, it didn't affect them in that way. So, okay, what about the Mass Effect thing?
So gaming is another thing that really annoys me. So I was not a big Mass Effect fan. I played a little bit of the first, never played the second, never played the third. My brother beat all three of them. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. They would go ahead and you could carry over your story. And then it was kind of going to be like a choose your adventure, multiple endings. Apparently people were not happy with the ending, and Twitter and Reddit and all these others where people were mad with the ending because they felt screwed. And as far as I know, Mass Effect, the creators of Mass Effect, BioWare, came out and patched out the ending to give a better ending to the game. And my brother, who played all three of them, was super happy with the ending. He's like, yeah, it was not like a happy ending. It wasn't what people wanted, but I actually kind of appreciated it for the story they told. And instead of sticking to their guns, apparently they kind of like half-ass stick to their guns, which I'm assuming if you're patching out the end of the game, there's only so much you can do anyway.
Yeah.
And they literally patched out a new ending into the game to appease the fans. And to speak to your point, the vast majority of people don't give a shit. Look at Call of Duty. If you watch any video game podcast, everyone hates Call of Duty. It's the worst game ever. Guess what? It's the best-selling game year after year.
Everybody
after
else
year.
loves it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people, Call of Duty is a smart game. They're like, people, when they took out the single player of Call of Duty, internet exploded. Oh, all the gamers were mad. They're like, we don't give a fuck. We know the vast majority of you don't play the single player. You just play multiplayer games. Mm-hmm. They saved production budget and made just as much money. And it's the same thing with Mass Effect. I'm assuming your average gamer didn't give two shits.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's like with the Game of Thrones thing, the most critically derided, the ones the fans hated the most, still has the most views of any of them. It broke all sorts of numbers, you know?
Yes, I'm sure that's crazy numbers that it's doing.
And it's interesting. So it's like, do the diehard Game of Thrones fans, like I kind of consider myself, do we just not like that it's so accessible? Is it that like we're just all elitist? Like, well, it used to be better back before your fucking normie ass came around, or I don't know. There's so many different psychological sides to it. Everybody wants to act like they're the best and the most knowledgeable about it and things like that. But I think, is there a better version of Game of Thrones to be told? Maybe in the end. Maybe somebody could redo the season and do a better job. The Last Jedi, maybe. I really doubt it's these Redditors that are starting these freaking petitions. I doubt they're the ones that are going to come in and make a better story. But what I do have to, like, in the case of, like, Sonic the Hedgehog, everybody was pissed about the way that Sonic looked. And so the studio decided that they were going to go in there and change it at the last minute. Did you like the look of Sonic?
I had no problem with it at all.
Do you think that setting the precedent that now, if you don't like the way a character looks and you get enough signatures, that the filmmakers will go back and correct it?
I think it's stupid as shit. I think they should have said no. So first of all, that movie's going to tank. The movie looks horrible.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, it. So first of all, I can go on a rant about that. I won't go too far, but like setting Sonic in the real world, dumb as shit. Why did they do that? Mm-hmm. They should have done it like the Pokemon movie. It's set in a different universe, as it should be. So there's a lot of problems with it. Least of it is Sonic. He looked like a realistic version of Sonic. You know, like that's what Sonic would kind of look like if he were around. And I don't like setting the precedent of, oh, if you freak out enough and if you guys throw enough hissy fits, because perfect example, you brought it up earlier, Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's announcement, people would have lost their shit. Just like I'm pretty sure you've heard already that Robert Pattinson got announced as Batman.
Oh, yeah, we were headed there too.
Yeah, already freak out. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see when it comes out. See how it looks.
Yeah. And that is that. So my kind of point about the Sonic thing is if it is for the greater good, if film is a collaborative process and ultimately you want people to show up to your movies, should the fans be a part of that collaboration? I still kind of fall in the camp of no, that they shouldn't. They're not professionals. But at the same time, if they're not going to go see the movie afterwards, maybe it's worth listening to them. I don't know. It gets complicated like that. But yeah, you bring up the next point, and that is Robert Pattinson was recently maybe cast as Batman. It's still not 100% confirmed, but everybody has run with that topic, and people have decided they ain't happy about it. Batman is the single most scrutinized series, and this is kind of hyperbolic, but of all casting in all movies ever since the beginning, nobody's been good enough for the Batman. Nobody's been good enough for the Joker. Every casting decision they've ever made was wrong. And here we are again, not even learning from our past experiences to say, just shut the fuck up, give it a second, you might actually like it. So first of all, separate from the drama, Robert Pattinson, could he be a good Batman?
I don't know. I think he's a good actor. I guess I'll have to see. I think he could be.
Are you one of the people that subscribe to the idea that he could pull off Bruce Wayne, but he couldn't be Batman?
No, I mean, I'm just one of those people. I always like to see, like, they got the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You to play the Joker and he killed it. You know, like, wait to see the performance.
I get existential with people because obviously Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same character. I'm like, look, you're hiring Bruce Wayne, so you need an actor that can play Bruce Wayne, and now it's Bruce Wayne's job to be able to pull that performance out of Batman, to be able to throw himself, his psyche, into this other persona. But you can't obviously cast two distinct... He's not the Incredible Hulk or something. Yeah. You don't cast two distinct people to play him. I like Robert Pattinson, and I haven't seen the Twilight movies to tarnish his reputation. Most of the movies that he's like critically praised for, like Cosmopolis and a couple of the other ones, I haven't seen those. But I watched this movie called Good Time like 2 weeks ago. And it just totally changed the way that I saw Robert Pattinson. And now I'm like, the dude he's somebody I really respect because he was making points off the Twilight movies. He never had to work again. He became like this teenage heartthrob where like prepubescent girls were going crazy over him. He didn't really have a lot of credibility. So he pulled back from acting and he went and started pursuing like independent movie roles and wasn't taking the big checks just to prove that he was actually an actor. And I think that he's reemerged as being one of the more talented people in the industry today. Does he look a little young? Does he read a little bit young to me? Yeah, he does, but I think he's about the same age Michael Keaton was in the original Batman movie.
Well, and from all the stories, I think this is going to be a Batman origin story. It's going to be year one. It's
sure.
And my thing that I find super ironic, why do we have Robert Pattinson now? Because everyone freaked out about Ben Affleck. That's why we have it, is because of fan outrage.
So you don't think people, I see in my experience, people liked Ben Affleck.
Oh, people in the film community love him. Everyone else hates Ben Affleck.
Okay.
They hate, like, go talk to anyone at your work. They hate Ben Affleck as Batman. They never really even saw the movie, but they heard that he sucked.
They've never seen Ben Affleck in a movie in general. They just know that that's what other idiots said.
Yes, because Ben Affleck's another guy who's a hell of an actor.
Yeah.
When people were I remember when he got cast, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I was actually shocked at the outrage from it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? And everyone referenced Geely or whatever.
Of course, the worst movie on the person's. And it's like, that's not my fault that your only frame of reference is the shitty movies you watch. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if you would have went out and seen more than Twilight, you wouldn't hate this guy for it.
Well, and that's why I see with the Robert Pattinson thing, everyone's like, oh, the guy from Twilight. I'm like, and a bunch of other fucking films where he's apparently amazing. I mean, I haven't seen a bunch of him, but I've heard like he has some amazing performances out there.
I think you would like Good Time a lot. It's really, really gritty. It's funny. It's dark. He doesn't have an English accent in it. I think that he is a good pick for the job. I wouldn't hate to see Nicholas Hoult get it either. I think that's fine. But like, I think we can both agree. Like, I don't want to see the precedent become, if the internet doesn't like you, we're going to change it to make them happy, because we're just such a temperamental group of people. I don't think there's ever going to be a place where consensus is just all the way across the board.
Who would be your dream casting of Batman?
Man, I was thinking about it yesterday. I had a hard time with it. My buddy Julio brought up the good points. Are we talking about year one? Are we talking about the old grizzled Batman? What is it that you would like to see out of the character? I really like the pick of all things, and I don't know how good he would be, but what's his name? Gerard Butler has a good look for an older Batman. But I also think that Robert Pattinson would be a pretty legit pick, man.
So one of my favorites is, like, I think I still stand by, even after seeing the movies, except for Justice League, because that was kind of fan outrage too, that we chopped up that movie and they got a worse movie out of it anyway. But I think Ben Affleck was brilliant, and he was great. And then I think John Hamm would make a hell of a Batman.
John Hamm kind of falls in that same age group as Ben Affleck, and I like Batman at that age. Gerard Butler also falls into that kind of, like, they're almost 50 or right around their 50s and stuff like that. And I think that they have the look for Batman. I think what's cool about Robert Pattinson is if they do want to make this year one, that they can stick around with him for a while, because even though he reads incredibly young. He looks like he could be the 23-year-old Bruce Wayne or 25-year-old Bruce Wayne. He's actually 33 years old, so he's not a super young guy, and I think it's tough for guys with that kind of look to get cast as ultra masculine people. And physicality is an important part of Batman, and I've never seen Robert Pattinson be able to sell me on like a physical scene. So that would be one concern.
They will pack muscle on him like no one else.
Yeah. He'll end up being 70 pounds heavier and just fucking yoked. Yeah.
That's what they do. I mean, look at Chris Evans now to when he started before pre-Marvel, Chris Evans. Those are two different men, or even Star-Lord, those are different. They'll do the same thing. Look at Wolverine from then to now. Like, they will pack muscle on Robert Pattinson. He will look like Batman by the end of it.
So if I were to start a petition telling everybody in Hollywood to ignore petitions and got it all signed, do you think that it would actually make a difference and that they would not even mind these things?
Totally seriously do that, because that's hilarious.
All right. Well, we got a little bit of today left, man. I'm about to get off this podcast, and we can really make a difference.
That'll be our contribution to the world.
Dude, thanks for talking to me again this morning. It's been fun.
All right, man. I will talk to you next week.
And on behalf of both of us, and until next time, be terrible.